Hi, I'm Don Cantor, former co-director of JLIC at Johns Hopkins University and current director of the Richmond Jewish Learning Experience in Richmond, Virginia.
And I'm Alex Ozar, co-director of JLIC at Yale University, and this is the Torah JLIC podcast. JLIC supports thousands of young Jews in their college years and beyond, providing them with the nourishment they need to sustain an upward trajectory of Jewish commitment and growth as they enter the broader world. And the animating engine of that effort, that has always been and will always be Talmud Torah, high-level, richly meaningful, thoughtfully creative Torah learning, ambitiously attuned to the realities of where our students are. On the Torah JLIC podcast, we hope to share some of that Torah with you. Thanks for listening.
Alex, last time you left us with a cliffhanger. You're trying to talk about nechama and what it means to comfort and whose job it is to comfort the Jewish people in times of distress, and you didn't finish.
Yeah, and I actually think that's largely to the point. I mean, nechama is not going to be a process we finish, or maybe God willing, one day. The process of nechama we were working through, as exemplified in the Shiva the Nechemta, the 7 Haftarot of Consolation from Yeshaya, that we're reading in these weeks when we're recording. We'll see when this comes out. As we said last time, these are process of consolation that is being addressed in its original context to the people who are still suffering devastation or still seeing the destruction of their nation, of their country, of their people, and still suffering. And what's offered to them as nechama is not making everything good again and restoring everything. It's a vision of the future. It's setting them on a journey. And consolation comes from, in the first place, from this sense that we're still moving towards something. There's still something to look forward to, still something we can be working towards. And it's worth it. It's worth it. There's a sense of hope. But it's not going to be finished. But let's try to get everyone caught up. We're starting the academic year. We're starting the Jewish year, still with a pointed sense of pain and suffering and loss and difficulty for the Jewish people, the state of Israel, for us as a Jewish community. It's hard on every level. We talked last time. Is it really uniquely hard? Is it worse than before? I don't know that it's worse, but worse than other times we've had. Probably isn't. There have been worse times. But it's uniquely difficult. And this is our pain, our sense of tragedy and loss. And whatever consolation is going to look like, it's going to emerge from and be addressed to our unique situation. And we talked about how nechama, as it's framed, the opening gambit of consolation in the 7 Haftarot is nachamu, nachamu ami, which does not mean be comforted my people. It's not God saying, guys, feel better now. It's an exhortation. God addresses the prophets and says, I want you to go out and provide consolation to the people. Nachamu, nachami, go out and console the people. Dabru alei Yerushalayim, go speak to the heart of Jerusalem. And so we started trying to articulate. I don't think it's simple. I don't think we've gotten even close. Starting to articulate how, in this Jewish view, consolation is started by God, it's inspired by God, but is the agents, the proximate agents, the people doing the work on the ground, at least at the beginning, are going to be us. Maybe just a subset of us, just the prophets, but again, really all of us in our aspiration to be prophetic and to take on that mantle. We all have some responsibility to not just be consoled or allow God to console us, which would already be a step, but for us to take responsibility for our own consolation, for getting up after having been knocked down so brutally and so painfully, to be able to get up and reorient ourselves to a life of Jewish hope. But then we saw in the midrashim, we saw just a couple little vignettes, incredibly poignant. Chazal have this insight. We saw in the Avutar Ham the way he reads the opening line of each of the 7 Haftarot Nechemta. At first, God, as we said, God exhorts the Nevi'im to go offer consolation to the people, and they try. They say Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, and then the response from the people is V'tomar Tzion Azavani Hashem. The people say back to the Nevi'im, who are you? Or we know who you are, but you're not who we need right now. It's God who abandoned us. And all of the tragedy, all the pain we've suffered, that hurts. But the reason it hurts is because it was at the hand of God, or at least God allowed it. We don't know where God is. And the felt loss of that relationship is the source of our pain, and that's why we need Hashem to show up himself. And nothing else, sending a note is not going to do it. Sending a message, even through a reliable messenger, is not good enough. We need Hashem to show up himself. And so the Nevi'im go back. They say, "Aniyas lo nuchama." The people they are not consoled. They remain a raging storm of pain. And then the response from God is, "Okay, I hear you. Anochi, Anochi hu menachamchem. I will show up and I will provide consolation." And so last time we were trying to start to work through the mechanics and dynamics of what that means, what it meant for what was the Havamina? What did Hashem originally think? Did Hashem really think that sending the Nevi'im was going to work, and then find out that it doesn't work, or did Hashem want us to go through the experience of realizing that what we really missed was God? We thought maybe it was just about the terms or the messages or propositions that we were being told, but actually what we needed was that relationship. We needed to feel that absence and call for it. Or maybe there really is a learning process on both sides. We're both working to figure out how this relationship is going to work. And then I think really the hardest part for us to make sense of is what it would look like, what it would feel like, what it would mean for Hashem to show up in person and be there with us, not just send a Navi, not just send a sign, not just structure history in a certain way, but actually show up, actually be there, and for us to feel that. I don't know exactly what that means, what that looks like. We have this one example in Jewish history and literature of direct speech between Hashem and the people at Mount Sinai. It doesn't really go well. It's very complicated. I don't get the impression that's what we're talking about. I'm talking about some other way that Hashem shows up. And so today I want to try to fill out the picture. This is highly speculative. I don't feel any certainty about what we're going to try to say here. But I do think there's something real. And I think the better way to put it is that I have some confidence in the validity of what we're gonna articulate today, but it's obvious to me that it is only one facet, one strand of a far more grand and complex fabric than we could ever hope to capture. But here's where I want to start. As we looked at a couple of midrashim from Sikta last time, there's a couple of versions of this story where Hashem sends the Nevi'im, and the Nevi'im are rejected by the peoples. You can't provide consolation. We need God himself. And then God has to show up. Here's another one. And it leads to a really interesting formulation. So Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu LaNevi'im. God says to the prophets, "L'chu v'nachamu Yerushalayim." Go provide comfort to Jerusalem personifying the people. It's a very long midrash. We're just going to do one little piece of it, but it's repetitive. So halach Hosea l'nachama. So Hosea goes, and the midrash has every named prophet in Tanakh. It goes through this story with. So Hosea tries. Now Kadosh Baruch Hu shalcheni etzlecha nachamach. Hosea shows up and says, "Hey guys, God sent me to provide you consolation." Amr lo ma b'yadech. They say, "Okay." They don't reject him out of hand. They say, "What's in your hands? What do you have for us?" Amr la eya katal Yisrael. It says, God will be like a comforting dew. Dew is a sense of peacefulness. You wake up in the morning, everything is fine, everything is stable, everything feels good, and you feel cared for.
A nice wet hug.
Yeah, exactly. Amra etmol amartali, and the people, they were prepared for this. This was a setup on their part. They say, etmol amartali hake Ephraim sharsham yavesh pri balya soon. That Ephraim will be smitten to its roots, and its fruits will no longer produce, it will dry up, and it will no longer produce fruits. Hosea, they say, you have, on behalf of God, but in your own words, with your own mouth, you have articulated curses to us. You have foreshadowed our destruction and doom. But Achshav, that's American, and now you show up and are providing consolation. You're telling us that things are going to be okay. Le'ezo namin, which should we trust? Is it the foretelling of doom, or is it the promise of comfort? We don't know. Which one? And then so the midrash, it goes on. It's very long. It goes through each navi. It does this. We talked a little bit about this last time. Each navi they're going to show up and provide nechama, but they've also offered remonstration and condemnation and the promise of doom. And so the Jewish people respond, we don't know how to make sense of this. It's a mess. You're all over the place, Hosea. You're all over the place, Yechezkel. And I think there's a sense that these are messengers of God, but there's a sense that when they come on their own as Hosea, when they're merely human, and we're engaging in a merely human dialogue. It's the people and Hosea as Hosea himself. And human beings in our relationships there's always ambivalence. This is a deep Freudian insight. I think it rings true. Even in the most loving, most caring, intimate relationship, there's always an element of aggression. There's even, it doesn't usually show up, thank God, or in good relationships, but still forms of hate, anger, resentment, bitterness, and aggression. These things show up. And no human being is ever fully sincere and fully loving and fully caring. And no human being can ever trust any other human being that they're really fully sincere and caring and loving and 100% there for you. Part of the tragedy of human life, the difficulty of human life, the predicament of the human condition itself, that for which we are perpetually in mourning and for which we are perpetually in need of consolation. And so this is confronted in a really pointed way here. Hosea shows up and people aren't saying, you shouldn't have said those bad things about us and you shouldn't have condemned us, and you shouldn't have foretold our doom. It doesn't sound like they're saying that. They're just saying, look, at the end of the day, it was justified, you were sent by God, sure, but how are we supposed to take you seriously given the forms of aggression and anger you've articulated to us before? Which is it? And you're a complex being, and we don't know how to relate to you. And we don't know how to get the kind of consolation that we would need from you. And so, again, in this story, after each Navi does this, and the Midrash, again, goes through each one to emphasize there's no escaping from this. No human can escape from this. It doesn't matter if you're Hosea or Yeshai or Amos or Yirmiyah or Yechezkel. It doesn't matter. Moshe Rabbeinu, it doesn't matter. They all go back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ve'amru, and they say to him, Ribona Olam lo kiba alei Yerushalayim litnachem. Jerusalem it refuses to accept our words of consolation, refuses to accept us as providers of consolation. So Amar Lam HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what's God's response? In the earlier version we saw last time, Hashem says, okay, I'll go instead of you. Right? I sent you, that didn't work. Now I realize that I need to go. And now they realize that they need me. But here he says something else. Amar Lam HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ani va'atem nelech v'ninchachamena. Let's go together, me and you, and provide comfort. I mean, nachamu nachamu ami. Nachamuha nachamuha imi, God says. It's creatively read. Come with me and provide comfort. And so here, I think we see an articulation, a realization that God's initial gambit is that it should be the people taking responsibility for their own consolation. We should be the agents of nechama. But then when that doesn't work, the reaction is not, okay, well, God is opposed to the people. It's, we need to do this together. And I think that the image is, we asked, what does it mean for God to show up and God to really be present as opposed to just sending a navi? What does that mean? I think the image here is the human beings showing up for each other in a way that is genuinely godly, in a way that somehow manages to transcend our mere humanity, that gets beyond and above that, in a way that really, even more than the extent to which a Navi usually provides, say, authentic, epistemically sound access to the divine message. We get information from God, from the Navi. But the Navi shows up in a way that allows us to really feel God's hug and embrace and love in a tangible way. I want us to think a little bit about the radical possibility that there's some way that human beings can show up for each other that can really feel like God giving us a hug. It's, as we said last time, we said at the beginning, what's offered here is not the realization of that. Right? We're not getting that Hashem's full presence and love, not yet. The question is, can we get enough of it? Can we get a taste of it? Some sense, some handle on what it would be, such that we can believe in it and have conviction in it, so that we can have enough strength and hope to continue on this crazy journey of Jewish history.
Do you think there's anything to the fact that the Nevi'im are being rejected, or at least Hosea here, that what we saw, his comfort is being rejected, but this is not the first time that things that he said has been rejected, right? They also didn't accept his criticism, but where God really wants to double down is on the nechama.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, right? I don't know, right? Like, right, we don't have. I don't think we have midrashic stories of Nevi'im going back to God. Well, we do, right? We have, Eliyahu goes back to Hashem and says, "This isn't working," and then Hashem actually gets really mad. Right? Okay, if you don't want to do it, I'll get somebody else. But right there, Hashem's response is not, "Okay, I'll go." Like, maybe God does punish us when things don't work out. So there's a way in which God shows up, and we feel the effect of God's actions. But yeah, I think it's incredibly powerful that it's just on this side where Hashem says, "I need to be the one to show up in person and be there. There's no other way this is going to be."
Right, but it's not without the Navi.
Yeah, and that's, again, I think there are different midrashic voices here, and some of them we saw it really is right. Hashem says, if we're first, try the Nevi'im don't work, so I'll go. And at least maybe it's ambiguous. Right? It doesn't mean and not the Nevi'im. That's not included. But also, like, it doesn't sound like the Nevi'im have any role.
Right.
But here, and maybe this is the source that Chasar here and fills out, or Chasar there and full here. It shows us what's really meant by Hashem showing up. What it was always meant, and there aren't really any other good possibilities, is the human beings showing up in a way that is genuinely godly, with God actually feeling tangible through the way they're showing up.
It also seems like the strategy that you have to criticize people has to be different than the strategy that you have to comfort people. And that comforting,
what do you mean?
It's not just that I'm bringing these words that God told me to say, and the next day I'm bringing these words that God told me to say. That seem to have a different theme, because one is critical and the other is comforting. It's that in order to really bring a message of comfort, it has to be like there has to be something else. There has to be another strategy taken. You have to be like strong, have some sort of like almost a godly type strength to be able to approach the people who you were criticizing just yesterday, and think about them in a way, and be there for them and with them in a way that they're really going to accept.
Yeah, thank you for this. I had not thought about this dynamic here. It rings very true to me. It's actually very easy often to effectively tear things down and tear people down, and to, not always, sometimes there are organizations or human movements which are just impossible to stop. But often you can destroy an organization, you can destroy a community, you can stop a lot just by violence and aggression, or even without real violence, but just through aggressive speech. That's often possible. But building a community and healing a community is so much harder, right? The amount of damage you can do, amount of psychological and spiritual damage you can do to somebody through a few words, that can take years of therapy to address and start to heal. And then the concatenation of that, of just, there's each individual of the people, and then each group, each family, each clan, each neighborhood, and then the community overall. The dynamics are so infinitely complicated. To think about how to get everybody the sustenance they need, and then get everyone together, there's something superhuman there. And yet, I think the message here is that, yeah, we are called to do something superhuman, called to do something godly, and Hashem promises is going to help. That's part of the deal. But we have a job to do. And precisely, like, I think there's a kind of gito v'adoba and ka'achad, an old Talmudic phrase, the means of making something possible and the thing itself that's made possible happen simultaneously. I think there's a sense in which the nechama, the consolation we're after, is the means of making us the kind of agents, actors who are capable of offering nechama. They come together. It's like we need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps in this godly way, such that we can provide nechama, but that requires us being consoled on our own to have enough hope and conviction to be able to do it. And so I want to the last piece here. This is highly speculative, and I'm weaving together a couple different midrashic strands here. But we talked about this image of Hashem saying, "Okay, well, I'll come," and then in some of the midrashim, Hashem shows up, and the people are happy with that. But again, we want to ask, really, what does it mean for Hashem to show up? What does that involve? And there are a couple midrashim that like carry on the story, and it turns out that what the people are looking for is not just a hug. They're not just looking for an embrace. And I spelled out the dynamic of you can't just send a text message. You can't just send a messenger. You have to actually show up. And that's what the people really need and really want. And if you actually show up, you can make things better. But actually, what they're looking for is something much more pointed. And it's the showing up is just the beginning. So in Sikta Rabati, V'atid HaKadosh Baruch Hu lomar Yerushalayim kibli mimeni tanchumi. So in this version, Hashem says, it will say in the future, to Yerushalayim, receive comfort from me. It's sort of like opening invitation. I'm here. I want to provide consolation. Please receive it from me. Amrulo. It's a stunning line. The fact that Chazal wrote this is just amazing. Amrulo, the Yerushalayim says back to God, Eino mikabel mimcha tanchumim. We are not accepting consolation from you until we have words of rebuke and admonishment. You cannot just waltz back in here and pretend like everything's okay. Like you caused us, and as Yerushalayim speaking, the people personified in Yerushalayim, you have caused us immense pain and loss and suffering. And there's a cost to that. You can't just waltz back in here and think everything's going to be all right just because you showed up. Right? You weave together the stories. They've been begging Hashem to show up. Like, please, we need you to come. But then he gets there. And the reason they want to see him is because they want to speak to him. We have to have words. And we're going to go out into the field. And we have some charges. And they say, look, we know we were bad. This was a two-way street. We get it. We were at fault too, 100%. But and we're not going to read the midrash inside. But is what we did worse than what Yosef's brothers did to Yosef? No, come on, it's not worse than that. And Yosef forgave them. And could you maybe not have been a little more Yosef-like and just forgiven us? Is there not, isn't there some? Again, it was bad, but you, at the end of the day, you got to take responsibility for what's happened. Justified, not justified, you did it. And not only that, but we're going to need you to not only make things right, but we're going to need you to go tell all of the other nations that we're not rejected, and that things are okay between us, because it looks really bad and it's embarrassing and humiliating. And it's now going to be on you because of what you did to go around and tell everyone that we're okay. This essentially, before we unravel what's going on here, I actually want to do the other side. So that's one side of the equation. Is Hashem comes to offer nechama, he's finally there in person, finally ready to embrace them again, and the people respond with, "Hold on, we need to talk," because there are real issues that need to be addressed. On the other side, this is in Psikta Rav Kahana. In this version, Rabbi Avin says, it's Lemelech. He says, what's this like, this situation? It's like a king, Shahayelo Palatin. King has a palace. V'nichnasu sonim letocho v'sarfu oto. And the wicked people come into the palace and they burned it. Mitzarech nachem. Who requires consolation here? Palatin or Baal Palatin? Is it the palace itself or the owner of the palace? Clearly, lo Baal Palatin. Obviously, it's the owner of the palace. God says, the temple is my home. Lo ani. obviously it's me. I'm the one who requires consolation. Have nachamu nachamu ami. And so here they read, provide comfort to my people as nachamuni nachamuni ami. You come comfort me. It's really radical and hard to read, I find. Here it's Hashem saying, look, I know you guys are hurting. Trust me, I get it. I know you're in a lot of pain. But you think you need consolation? The amount of pain you're going through is nothing compared to what I'm suffering right now. And like, you just want to sit there and want me to show up and give you a hug and tell you everything's going to be okay. Well, maybe later. Right now, I need you to come. I need you to come to me and give me a hug. I'm the one suffering. I need help. How am I supposed to continue on in this relationship if you don't come and give me the comfort that I need? But so you take these two pictures together, Hashem going to the people and the people saying, whoa, we are not taking nechama until until we really have this out. There are things we need to say to you, and there are charges we need to address. We have real complaints. And then on the other side, Hashem saying, oh, you guys need consolation. I need you to come to me. And like, there are things I need you to address. Whose fault was this? And why did this happen? And but I think if you put these two together, taking a little bit of creative license here, you get an image of two parties to a relationship, a deeply loving but deeply complicated relationship, who have each hurt each other, are each in an immense amount of pain. And the opening move is, look, we miss each other, and we both just want this relationship to continue, and we know that that's going to require nechama. It's going to require us feeling okay on our own and feeling okay together. And we want to give that to each other. I want to give that to you. You want to give that to me. But then the realization kicks in, and they knew this all along. You can't just show up and say sweet things. That can help you get in the room. Send a note that says, and that's the opening thing. You send the Nevi'im and say, hey, can we talk? I really miss you. I want to make things right. And then you actually get in the room together. And you say, I really missed you, and I want this to work. But if it's going to work, what's required is real accountability and real mutuality, reciprocality. Both sides are going to have to actually, again, not just say sweet things, not just promise everything's going to be great. That's not how relationships work. Both sides are going to have to be genuinely vulnerable to each other, genuinely listen to the concerns on the other side and the ways in which they were hurt. Right? Even the people, and Chazal put this in their mouths in really theologically audacious way. Obviously, it was their fault, but they were hurt by God, and that leaves a mark, and Hashem has to address that and find some way to repair it. And on the other end, like, we can't just say, yeah, we messed up. Let's move on. We'll do better next time. We have to find some way to not only do better, which is obviously the most important thing, or maybe not. It's the first thing. But we need to repair our relationship. We've caused Hashem real pain, and we need to be thinking about how we're going to make Hashem feel better. And the images in both sides genuinely vulnerable to each other, genuinely holding themselves accountable. I really each saying, I want to be here for you, not just to be sweet and caring and loving, but to work with you, to listen to you, to really hear how I hurt you, and really try to acknowledge what I did wrong, and really try to make you feel like I'm committed to doing better, and really will be committed to doing better. And then so taking that and like, what would it mean for us to show up for each other in a way that makes that spirit real, that makes that form of godliness real? And here it's obviously just going to be one very small piece of the equation. There are a lot of big things that none of us can control. We need, different versions of what the Yemos Mashiach look like and how we get there. And is there some kind of grand apocalyptic event, or is it gradual? I don't know. None of us know. But maybe there's some other role for Hashem to play. But I think the image here is that, so much of our pain and so much of our problems and our tragedy comes from the fact that we don't show up for each other in the right ways. We don't hold ourselves accountable to each other in the right ways, and we cause each other a lot of pain. And to start getting a sense of what this kind of nechama would be involves us as human beings showing up for our friends, our neighbors, our communities, our nation in a way that is vulnerable to real accountability, where there's been pain and there's been, things have gone wrong and there's been hurt and tragedy. We need to be asking questions like, are there things we could have done better? And if there are people who are saying there are things we could have done better, we need to listen and really listen, even if we were justified, even if we were right. But maybe there's pain we caused that we can address in a real way, in a vulnerable way, and that goes both ways. We need to actually, there's a way of, when other people have hurt us, there's a way of writing them off and saying, we're not interested in having a real conversation with you. Maybe we'll find some modus operandi where we can just sort of be in the same room together, but we're not interested in having a real conversation. We need to be open to that. There's a kind of vulnerability there too, and be willing to tell them, you hurt me in this way, and I need you to address it, right? And in this story, midrashic story we've woven together, like neither Hashem nor the people do this right away. They're not able to say it outright. There needs to be that opening invitation to first let's try nechama, and there's this let's say the sweet things to each other and show each other just that we care and we're committed to it. It's only after that you've gotten in the room together and you're able to sit down that you're able to say, then we have some things we need to talk about. And it's, what have I done wrong to you? And what have you done wrong to me? And how are we going to make that better? And so I find this just an incredibly poignant and powerful and I think helpful and enriching vision of something we can do to give us a sense of, start giving us a sense of nechama as a Jewish people. I think there's so much pain, and there's so much pain from sources we can't possibly control. But I think the deepest pain comes from the fact that we're, I don't want to say at war with each other, it's too strong, but we don't get along. If the Jewish people were really all on the same page, the external stuff would be a lot easier to deal with. The real pain is we don't feel like our relationships are sustained in the right ways. We don't feel like we as the Jewish people are really fully one in the way we want to be. And it's because of that we don't feel Hashem's presence and we don't feel Hashem's care. And I think for us to try to get a hold on that will be for us to reach out to each other, find those people we've hurt, find those other groups that who've hurt us and we've hurt, find ways to get in rooms together and be open to real conversations, and then try to carry on those conversations in a spirit of real openness, real vulnerability, and real mutual accountability.
That's really incredible. And it's also a very interesting example, the way that you're reading these midrashim, of how Chazal might be blurring the lines between our relationship with God and our relationship with other people.
Say more.
It almost seems like the rabbis in these midrashim are trying to tell us how we need to repair our relationships with each other. But in order to do that in a way that we will be able to hear it, they do this crazy radical thing that they put God as the other person, which is meant to sound crazy to us, but it becomes so obvious, especially when you read it the way that you're reading it, that it might not just be about God.
Yeah, and again, this is all I've said a few times to protect myself. Put a kiviyachol in front of all of this, and it's all speculative and creative interweaving of various things here. But I think it's right. I think it would be a mistake, though, to say methodologically, theologically. I don't think it's right that the depiction of the relationship between God and the people is a metaphor for the relationship between people and people. I don't think that's right either. I guess it's dafka wrong. If anything, the reverse is true. But I think Chazal really do, and also, right, as I've said, there's obviously room in this picture, a lot of room, a huge amount of space for the classical, just straightforward theological view of God as a discrete actor who shows up and intervenes in history and does grand things that are clearly divinely authored, and that are not through these kind of subtle human interactions. But also, I think it's true, and I think what these midrashim are trying to say is that Hashem really is manifest. Godliness really is manifest through the way we treat each other, and through the way we carry ourselves, and through the way the Jewish people carries itself in the world. I think the most classic formulation of this is just a sign of it is just the idea of Kiddush and Chilul Hashem, like the way we conduct ourselves, taken as a reflection on God. But I also like as a final piece, the distinction or what God offers. The initial gambit is God sends the people on their own, the prophets on their own. One alternative is for God to show up himself as opposed to the prophets. But the articulation of Nelcha imi v'ninachamena, let's go together. There's this vision of the human beings in their humanity, because we're never more than human, going with God and providing consolation with God, that means there's some way in which we interact with the people around us, with each other, in which God is manifest. God's really there, and really present. And there's a way in which that's not true. There's a way in which we can interact with each other where God's not present, where God's left out of the equation. But the aspiration and the mandate from God is that we find a way to do it. We work towards making more and more real God's actual presence in our real interactions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Don. This has been both intellectually challenging, spiritually challenging, but also at least, it's given me a real sense of the beginnings of Nechama as we continue to move through these difficult times.
Hopefully it wasn't hard for you and me to get Nechama with each other. Things weren't
yeah. Well, we'll talk later. Have a good one.
All right.